Welcome to this week's edition of Flashback Friday, your opportunity to get some good review by listening to episodes from the past that Jason has handpicked to help you today in the present and propel you into the future. Enjoy.
Speakers, publishers, consultants, coaches, and info marketers unite. The Speaking of Wealth show is your roadmap to success and significance. Learn the latest tools, technologies, and tactics to get more bookings, sell more products, and attract more clients. If you're looking to increase your direct response sales, create a big-time personal brand, and become the go-to guru, the Speaking of Wealth show is for you. Here's your host, Jason Hartman.
Welcome to the Speaking of Wealth show. This is your host, Jason Hartman, where we discuss profit strategies for speakers, publishers, authors, consultants, coaches, info marketers, and just go over a whole bunch of exciting things that you can use to increase your business, to make your business more successful and more passive and more automated and more scalable. So we will be back with a great interview. Be sure to visit us at speakingofwealth.com. You can take advantage of our blog, subscribe to the RSS feed, and many other resources for free at speakingofwealth.com. And we will be back with a great interview for you in less than 60 seconds.
Now you can get Jason's Creating Wealth in Today's Economy home study course. All the knowledge and education revealed in a 9-hour day of the Creating Wealth Bootcamp, created in a home study course for you to dive into at your convenience. For more details, go to jasonhartman.com.
It's my pleasure to welcome Naresh Vissa to the show. He is a digital media sales consultant, and he has great experience in the terms of marketing with Stansberry Research and Stansberry Radio Network, and just a lot of good tips for marketing. We've been working together, and he's been helping us with some of our marketing. So Naresh, welcome. How are you?
Thanks a lot, Jason. I'm doing great. You know, I'm taking a short vacation, so I'm glad to get into sunlight.
Good for you. And you are in Baltimore today, though, right?
I'm actually in Texas. I do live in Baltimore, which is where the Stansberry and Agora headquarters are. But I'm taking a short spring break down to Texas. I have some family here, and it actually snowed earlier this week in Maryland, so I needed to get out.
Yeah, well, good for you, getting a little nice weather. But you have a very unique skill set in the world of online media and publishing. Tell us how you got started.
Yeah, this is it's actually very interesting. I got started at a fairly young age. I was still in college. And how it happened was I interned at a radio station. It was a business financial radio station the summer after my freshman year of college. And after my internship ended, I was able to accomplish quite a lot, and the company asked me to continue to work for them while going to school. So I said, not a problem, and it was a paid gig and all that good stuff. So I found myself a nice little job to pay for textbooks and other things while also going to school. And basically what I did was book guests for their different radio programming. And I also did a little bit of social media and marketing work. It wasn't any sales work per se, because the station was not very profitable and it was not doing too well. But it was just some kind of general old school marketing that I was doing for them.
Mm-hmm. And that was a traditional terrestrial radio.
Yes, that was terrestrial radio. The whole podcasting idea did not catch on back then. It was still in its baby stages, and not many people were doing it. So it was on. The station was broadcast out of Houston, Texas, which is where I'm from. It was also broadcast out of Dallas, and then they added Colorado, a couple of places in Florida, and San Antonio, Texas. So it did have a good reach, but it was still stuck in the terrestrial space.
And you went to Duke University, right?
Yes, I did my master's degree at Duke University. So throughout my undergraduate, I did my undergraduate years in upstate New York, and then I did my master's at Duke. And throughout my undergrad and graduate schooling, I was very involved with media production, both on the radio, television, and print sides. And then I also was involved with various marketing freelance activities as well.
Well, when we talk about marketing in its more modern form, it all integrates social media, direct response, regardless of what business one is in. It involves the internet in a big, big way. Let's talk first maybe about podcasting. Do you think it's the future of radio, or how would you compare it to terrestrial radio? And of course, I have my own thoughts on this too, but I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you first.
Yeah. Well, first off, I think you're probably one of the few people in the world who understands podcasting and the value of it. And I'll let you answer after I'm done. But I think podcasting is so huge. I think that is the next big wave of radio, and also that I think that's where the money's at because of the internet. Terrestrial radio, keep in mind, I used to work in terrestrial radio. That's where I started out. And when I was interning at this company called Biz Radio, that company went up. They couldn't make any money because it runs on an advertising model. They ended up going under and were doing some shady things here and there, and the SEC came down on them. But anyway,
by the way, did you say FCC or SEC?
I said the SEC. Okay. The Securities
and Exchange Commission. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So that was doing things with investors. That was the problem then.
Right. So that's actually a good point you bring up, because with terrestrial radio, a lot of the financial guys on AM, FM radio, they have some kind of money management business, and what they're trying to do is they're essentially treating the radio shows that they do as a loss leader to funnel in people so they can become their clients, or they can somehow take part in their other business. So that's kind of the old terrestrial radio model, which is, it certainly it's valid. It makes sense. But at the same time, I said the SEC came down on my former employer because that model wasn't working for them. They just weren't able to bring in enough people. The radio station was not making money, and they had a staff that was exorbitant. Salaries were getting out of hand, and it turned into what the SEC found was there was just one big Ponzi scheme going out. Investors were defrauded, this and that. With podcasting, however, you're on the internet space, and there are all sorts of ways you can make money. The first way is, of course, traditional advertising. If you build up your following, and which I'm sure you have, Jason, you build up your following high enough, and people will come to you and say, where do I sign up to get a 60-second spot on your podcast or to get a banner on your website? That's huge. That was unavailable during the terrestrial days. Then the second area where you can make money off podcasting is if you have a product to sell. So let's say you are a financial advisor, or let's say you have a newsletter. You can use your radio show as a means to sell your product. And the value of a listener to your podcasting show is much greater than the value of a regular consumer who's listening in their car to an AM or FM station. According to my calculations, and this is through experience, the value of an iTunes subscriber. So when you go on iTunes and you subscribe to a podcast, you're basically using an Apple-related device. You're using a pretty upper echelon device, so you already fit a special profile. And B, by hitting subscribe, automatically episodes are going to download, and that shows that you're a loyal fan of the podcast or the show. So according to my calculations, the average lead is worth about $15 to $17. And in the online space, particularly within the newsletter industry, the average name is we're talking about $6 or $7. So that right there shows the power of a podcast lead.
Yeah. And by the way, I just got to mirror what you're saying so well, because one of my companies used to spend about $250,000 a year advertising on terrestrial AM radio. Well, we did a few FMs, but it was vast majority was AM talk radio. And it was amazing, Naresh. The people that would call up, some of them wouldn't have an email address, if you can imagine. I mean, this was maybe we stopped doing that maybe 4 years ago probably. Okay. And, we've sort of tinkered with it since then, but podcasting, it works better. It's a better clientele, because the other thing is it's not a casual looker who just happens to be passively listening. It's someone who went and found your content. They found you. and they seeked it out. So they were interested. They qualified themselves, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that's how, at least, working at Stansberry, a lot of the new leads that we were able to generate were a result of podcasting. It wasn't people who we marketed to or any of that. The iTunes space, anyone can get on iTunes now from around the world, and we were able to suck in people to our different radio shows in 30 different countries, and we were able to convert them from just regular listener to front-end newsletter buyer, and then to back-end newsletter buyer to lifetime member in a matter of 3 to 4 months. That's how quick things are going. So, and it goes to show the power of podcasting, because as a listener, you actually get to hear the person writing the newsletter, or you get to hear the person selling the product. Whereas when you're reading copy or watching a video, you're missing out that element. And once again, as a listener, you feel like that you have a personal connection to that individual. You feel like, I'm sure, Jason, you have a lot of different shows, and I'm sure your listeners probably would call you one of their good friends, even though they've never talked to you, they've never met you, you've never met them, but they know you so well because of the podcast element. And when you come out with a new product, they're probably thinking, where do I sign up to buy it?
Right. And one of the reasons I think for that is that you're not limited with podcasting with the time constraints and the commercial breaks. So people can really sort of get to know you better, if you will. That's just one of the other things. But they know you on any radio show. If you're in terrestrial radio, you kind of know the host and so forth. But with the constraints of having to do commercial breaks here and break up the thought pattern and being limited on time, that's another part of it. So yeah, no, totally agree with you.
Yeah, and the other thing is I work a lot with publicists, and publicists have this perception of online radio. They think nobody listens because it's so easy to get online. And yes, it is. All you need is a microphone. You need a computer with an editing software, which you can find for free online. And you need a subscription to a distributor like a Libsyn Pro, and then boom, you can become a podcaster, you can become a host, and all that together, you're looking at a cost of maybe $100. So anyone can do this. And going back to the publicists, because it's so easy to do this, publicists actually are not big fans of podcasts because they think nobody listens to them.
Yeah, they're crazy. That's the old days. They better catch up.
Yeah, and when they hear something like Dallas-Fort Worth, a show out of Dallas-Fort Worth that plays at 3 p.m. on a Sunday, they think that's a much better outlet than, say, a podcast on the internet that might be ranked number 10 on iTunes in its respective section.
You must admit, though, they're coming around, though. They're starting to get it. A publicist is seeing that some podcasts are highly rated. All a podcast is an audio or video blog. And that's the same thing it was years ago with bloggers. And then we saw some bloggers became very famous. And so it's the same thing. They're coming around, but I'd agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you say they're coming around, right now is really a great time to get in before the oversaturation occurs. And, that could take another 5 or 10 years. But if you're looking to get into podcasting, do it now, because I think there is a lot of low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, no question about it. So in terms of other marketing opportunities, either with podcasting or just in general in the digital realm, where did you want to take the conversation?
Yeah, so one of the things that I want to talk about is the sales process. And obviously, if you're a businessman, Jason, I think a lot of people listening want to make money. And people think that you have to be some kind of crazy genius entrepreneur to create an online business or to just make a lot of money in general. But it's actually very simple. And what we were able to accomplish at, say, a Stansberry, a company like Stansberry, which sells information. They don't really sell a unique product, but they sell investment information that you could probably find just by putting in a few Google words. But I want to discuss why these companies are so successful, these publishers are so successful. And it really starts with developing a business model that is efficient and that is simple. And I was able to implement a model at Stansberry, the Stansberry Radio Network, where we made money through advertising. We made money through selling existing products to an email list. And then we also made money by coming out with premium content. So that's paid, basically whatever you might be talking about, except you charge for it. Maybe you give them a little extra. So you come up with a model like that, and it's applicable to really anything and anyone. Any blogger can apply this kind of three-pronged approach to sales generation. A doctor, a lawyer, if you have a website, you can do the same thing. And it's pretty simple. So if we start with, I want to talk a little bit about the mailing list, because the mailing list is kind of the X factor in this whole game. The mailing list affects your ad revenue that you're going to generate. It's going to affect the amount of sales revenue you're going to bring in through selling your product. And it's also going to give you credibility to the external markets. If you say that you have a mailing list in the six figures, then people know, oh, wow, those are actually 300,000 real email addresses that this person actually generated. He actually has this many people listening to his show or reading his blog or even knowing who he is. So the mailing list is huge, and finding ways to capture email leads, email names via just good content, good podcast content, good print content, or other means is just imperative, because once you have that mailing list built, really the sky is the limit for how much money you can end up making.
Yeah, the mailing list, I used to say money doesn't grow on trees, it grows on databases.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no question about it. That list is important, and don't diminish your list by spamming it to death and having people leave. And it's just you. How often can you email the list? I mean, that would almost be one of really my criticisms of Stansberry, is just too much mail. But I don't know. They've got a pretty good formula at Agora, and they kind of know what works. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so that's actually, I did some research on that topic, and what I found, and this was during the presidential election of 2012, Obama, he had his own mailing list, and he started sending a lot more emails than he did before. And I was wondering, why, what's the reason for this? He obviously has some kind of marketing campaign manager. And in the research that I found, and what the Obama campaign found, they found that sending more email actually did not have an impact on unsubscribes. So when I kind of did my own research, and when I read what their findings were, I said, you know what? Let's go ahead and send more sales emails to our lists and see what the response is. So when I tested that out, the response was not more unsubscribes. In fact, the number of unsubscribes went down because we sent more emails.
So my answer to that, of course, you have to qualify that with how valuable are the emails? What do they contain? I mean, are they useful to people, right?
Right. So the key, of course, is the emails need to contain good content and good copy. So even if you're trying to sell something, even if the email is solely meant to sell a newsletter or to sell, some kind of product, you want to make sure that whatever is in the email is at least interesting, has some sort of educational value, and will keep someone engaged. So that instead of hitting the unsubscribe button, the person either hits the click here button to read more, or they just delete the email and move on with their life. So what I found, as I was saying earlier, was our sales numbers went up remarkably as a result of sending more emails. More sales emails equaled more revenue. That's how things worked out. So I know the general kind of status quo says, be careful with your list. You don't want to spam them. You don't want to send them too much. But my advice is, if you're looking to sell a product and to make money, keep sending those sales emails. Now, if you're looking to plug maybe a partner of yours, or someone comes to you and says, hey, we'll pay you money to plug this, then just be careful about how you do it. You might want to do it a right way instead of coming out of the blue and kind of shocking your audience with something they've never heard of. But the main thing is treat your list right and continue to send them sales emails from you, because they know who you are. They know what your products are. And the only reason they're on your list is very likely they want to buy something.
Yeah, and they want to be informed and have a unique take. Do you have any thoughts on branding and developing that niche for oneself, and having it be relevant, because that of course it applies to the email discussion we just had, but it applies to everything, the overall brand. I mean, maybe you can analyze Stansberry's brand a little bit and then talk about it in general. There's certainly a lot of people out there with financial newsletters. What makes him different?
I guess we can use Stansberry as an example and compare it to everyone else. But Stansberry very clearly, Porter Stansberry, for example, he takes a position. You know what, I'm sure many of your listeners have watched his End of America video that he came out with a couple of years ago. It's probably the most watched video in the newsletter, in the history of financial newsletters. And the key with branding, not just with Porter or with any of his competitors, the key is you want to take a position. You want to have a very clear opinion, and you want to take a side so that people know what you stand for. And that way it will be much easier to build a following. If you take a position, or if you don't take a position, if you don't take a side, then it's very difficult to convince people that your stuff is going to be better than, say, a Porter Stansberry's or a Harry Dent, who comes from a very different perspective that Porter comes from. So the first thing I would say with anyone who's looking to build a brand for any product, it doesn't have to be a newsletter, it can be anything, is you need to take a stand. You need to have very clear opinions. You know, you can't say that you're a Republican and you're a Democrat. You can't say that you support Obama and you support Mitt Romney, which is what a lot of people do, and that's what a lot of publications do, which is, I understand they're trying to stay away from the politics, or they're trying to keep away from alienating a certain crowd of people.
But that's completely stupid. And, I totally agree with what you're saying. This is called the law of polarization. And you've got to, there's an old saying, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And I'll tell you something. I'll give you an example, Naresh, and I'm sure you can think of other examples as well. But Los Angeles talk radio is one of the biggest talk radio markets in the country, if not the biggest. I think it's the largest and the second most lucrative, New York being a little more lucrative, but LA actually being the largest in terms of ratings. And there are the three major talk stations. There's KFI, KBC, and KRLA. And Dennis Prager, who is a brilliant talk show host and a brilliant author, I really like his work a lot. He used to be on KABC, if I'm recalling correctly. And he switched to the lower rated station, KRLA, because he's sort of like a really well-reasoned, rational guy. He's not a shock jock, if you will. And the more radical shock jocks, like the John and Ken show on KFI, they're the highest rated. I mean, that's the highest rated station. And I think for their time slot, they're definitely the highest rated, I believe. And people want to believe in something. They want to follow something. And whether it's right wing or left wing, that's not the point. The point is that you got to take a position and have some guts and be willing to repel people. You're going to repel some, but at the same token, you're going to attract others with more intensity. So I completely agree with you. This whole concept of not wanting to offend anybody, it's absurd. It doesn't work.
Yeah. And another good example is someone like Alex Jones, who I'm sure your listeners are familiar with.
Alex Jones, he offends a lot of people.
Oh, yeah. Right, but what I'm trying to say here is these guys and girls, now they did not wake up one morning and say, you know what, I'm going to become a radical conservative today. They actually believe in what they say, and a lot of it is true, don't get me wrong, but they actually believe in what they say, and they do stand for what they say as well. So you can see that there's really there are no falsehoods. There's really, these are real people, and they have facts to back up they have facts to back up their conclusions, and as a result, they're able to gather just these huge mass followings of folks, and they're able to sell them their products.
Yeah, totally good point. Okay, what else about branding?
Yeah, so that's the first thing. Branding, you definitely want to take a position, take a side. The second thing you want to do is treat yourself as a brand, and that's something that people forget. They get so caught up with their own work, that they'll put out a newsletter and then they'll take some time off, or they'll have a big product launch and then, go on vacation for a month or so. But you have to remember that for example, Jason Hartman, you are a brand. Your name, Jason Hartman, is a brand. the name Jason Hartman means a lot more than just, a guy in Arizona who does real estate or who does radio podcasts. It means a lot more. So what I mean by that is getting involved with the community, doing things outside your work that will, in the end, increase goodwill and impact your business. That could mean doing media, going in front of TV and educating the public on whatever your expertise is. It could mean writing a book, be it a bestseller or even an ebook. It could mean starting an organization, some kind of not-for-profit. But you are a brand, no matter who you are, no matter if you want to be an entrepreneur, if you want to work in business and be successful in business, you're more than just a few dotting I's and crossing T's on a contract and taking a check home. There's a lot more to it than that. So I think people need to recognize that when it comes to branding, because the brand with the internet now, people Google your name, the brand means so much more than even the truth, which is kind of unfortunate.
But yeah, it isn't, it's not. Oh, who was it? I can't remember. The name just escapes me offhand. But someone said brands are a form of shorthand. In today's busy world, we've got so much to think about and so much information coming at us that branding it's a form of shorthand. And for better or worse, I agree with you, Naresh, that it's not always a positive thing that people make decisions based on a brand because maybe there's a better one out there. But the fact is, we all need shortcuts in a busy world.
Yeah, and that's what Google does. Google does allow people to take that shortcut, and you put in the name and you can find, you read one or two bios and boom, you feel like you know the person and what they're all about. You see a couple of bad things on a message board about someone or something, about a product, a company, and that could ruin your brand. So, always pay attention to that type of stuff on the internet. But in order to improve your brand, doing some of the things that I mentioned will not only improve your standing on the internet, but it'll improve that kind of intangible branding in the regular person's mind.
Yeah, good stuff. Okay. Now, since you went out on your own, you've been able to attract quite a few customers to your business. How did you do that?
Yeah, so it was a process. This is actually it is the most difficult part of going out on your own because, as you know, you're not going to have any business unless you know people. So as I mentioned earlier, I started when I was in college, and then throughout grad school, and then throughout my full-time job, I was always networking, but not in the sense that, hey, I need to network to start my own company, but it kind of came with the territory. It came with my job. It's just that I always had to do it. So when it was time for me to go out on my own, I had a solid set of contacts and a database of experts and folks who could probably use my services. And I was able to create a niche for myself in the digital media world, in the podcasting space, the radio space, media, and also sales and marketing in general. I was able to kind of carve out a niche. And so people would come to me, or they came to me and said, I need help with this area of my business, or I need help driving more leads to my website or collecting more names. And, I had experience doing that, and I was able to convince folks on the phone in a relatively short conversations and say, I can help you do this. Just give me 2 weeks. And if you're happy, then I'll continue doing work for you. And if you're not, then we'll part ways. So a lot of it is finding a skill that you have or developing a skill. It's hard to find a skill, but developing a skill that's incredibly unique from the average person, and then running with that skill, going out, finding folks who could utilize your skill, and ultimately at the end of the day, making everybody more money, because that's what it comes down to.
Good points. Well, just maybe last question for you, Naresh. What do you think the future of the digital media landscape looks like, whether it be podcasting or all of it? And we started this conversation talking about your experience with terrestrial radio, and I got to tell you, I think that there's going to be a lot of movement, a lot more movement toward the world of podcasting or internet type radio, with automobiles being more and more connected than ever. They're making leaps in automobile technology. Like, it's a good reason to want to get, if your car is 2 years old, I mean literally 2 years, it's like saying when the first iPhone came out, if your cell phone is a year old, you need a new one, because like there's been a big leap, and that's what is happening now with automobiles and internet connectivity.
Yeah. So obviously we're technologically with the whole iPhones and Google and Apple really having almost an oligopoly, things are really advancing at a rapid pace. The amount of people who have smartphones has reached more than 1 billion people across the world, which is remarkable. And that's really an opportunity for people to take advantage of. So a few numbers that I want to throw at you. Now, today, approximately 40% of all email is opened via a cell phone or a tablet, so like an iPad.
A mobile device.
40%. 40% of all email. That as a marketer or as an entrepreneur, think about that, because there's so many companies out there, of course, who are doing things a traditional way, which is fine because there's still a lot of money to be made there. But 8 years from now, that 40% is very likely going to be 80 or 90%. Who knows how many people are going to be using laptops by that time. So when it comes to digital media, keep track of these trends. I think mobile is going to be huge. I mean, it already is big right now, but mobile down the road, everything's going to be done through mobile. Starting your car, buying your groceries, really anything and everything will probably have the mobile phone involved in some way, shape, or capacity. So I want people to keep track of that. And the other thing is TV, radio, all of those. You know, radio already, as we're seeing, is being converted into the podcast space. But more TV shows are very likely going to be made for web only. Already we've been seeing some of that, but I think the number is going to increase rapidly. So these are all trends that as an entrepreneur or maybe as a young person trying to figure out, you know, what you want to do with your career, keep in mind of these things and maybe try to do some research, try to get some experience working at either a research company that's tracking these types of trends, or even at a digital media company that is helping traditional companies adapt to these changes. I think that's going to be key for the younger folks and even for current folks working in the industry.
Yeah, good stuff. And I think there's been some good ground covered here, folks. If you're not podcasting, you need to start. When I published my first book back in 1999, I said, if you don't have a website, drop everything until you get one. And now I'm saying drop everything until you get your podcast going, because that is one of the most important things you can do. So Naresh, thanks so much. Give out your website if you would. Tell people where they can find you.
Sure. I can be found at nareshvissa.com. That's NARESHVISSA, nareshvissa.com. You can contact me if you go to the website. And if you have any other questions, just feel free to get in touch, and I respond to all my emails. And you can also tweet me at xnareshx.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us.
All right. Thanks, Jason.
This show is produced by the Hartman Media Company, all rights reserved. For distribution or publication rights and media interviews, please visit www.hartmanmedia.com or email media@hartmanmedia.com. Nothing on this show should be considered specific personal or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own, and the host is acting on behalf of Platinum Properties Investor Network, Inc. exclusively.